didn't memorize the names of Civil War places, dates, times. Yep. I was into science, enjoyed science, hated history. Now I like history. I tolerate science because some of my colleagues are not too bright. Oh, they're bright, they're just not too bright. You know, when I was in school, we had 92 elements. Now there are 116. Everything is growing, everything is changing, everything is moving. And so is Converse. Thank God. But if you remember when you were a little kid, you lie there at night and your legs would hurt, or your arms would hurt, because you were growing. They're called growing pains. And either your mother would rub them, nowadays they give them a pill. Makes you feel better. Converse has growing pains, I'm sure. Fortunately, I don't hear about the growing pains. Yeah, that's the picture. Good work, lady. As she was going through the pictures, I saw this one go by. And I thought, ladies and gentlemen, of all of the pictures she had, of old airplanes and nuclear airplanes, and of the water tower, the Taj Mahal, and Randolph and stuff, that is a picture of the first successful launch and recovery vehicle of the first 3 mice in space. It was my father's project, and I have that vehicle. I won't tell you where I'm keeping it hidden, but I have it. And that picture, out of all of the pictures she had, that, ladies and gentlemen, is due to Converse. My father developed that while we lived right here in our town. He was a genius, yes. He worked at School of Aviation Medicine at Randolph, then School of Aerospace Medicine at Brooks, became the chief scientist for the Air Force, hated it because every minute that he got kicked upstairs, it was more political and less lab. All he wanted was a laboratory, an assistant, and be left alone. And my mother to feed him and clothe him. I remember that every morning my father would walk through the house going, Hemdchen Schäfchen, ich brauche ein Hemdchen Schäfchen. We spoke German at home, which means a shirt, my dear. I need a shirt. He couldn't find his own shirts if you drew him a city map. So she got him a shirt and she buttoned it for him and she patted him on the hiney and off he went to work to invent brilliant things and write brilliant stuff. He was fortunate. He had a brilliant secretary. She was an older lady and a general no longer wanted her, so he dumped her and my father took her and she was wonderful. Whenever he wrote stuff on his board in his office that he didn't want other people to know, he wrote it in Greek. My father read, wrote, and spoke Greek, Latin, Italian, German, French, yeah, English too. I was going to start off with one of the speeches that he started off with. When he first came to the United States and he held a speech for a whole bunch of scientists, he wanted to say, gentlemen, take your coats off, it's hot. And he translated very rapidly from German, and he said, gentlemen, remove your clothes, you will like it. And some of them said, you're home. He learned English the hard way, as we did. We didn't have bilingual education when I was in school. I was bilingual. I didn't speak much English. But I learned it very rapidly. Where did I learn English? From the funny papers. We got the funnies. Stuff they don't do anymore. I know television. We didn't have television. I told you I was old. Sorry. We had a radio program that read the funnies to you. And so I had the funnies, and they read the funnies, and I read what they read, and I understood what they were saying pretty soon. My English wasn't too bad. I don't hunt for English words anymore unless it's in English and I'm still looking for it. English is a funny language. It's constantly changing. There are words that I wasn't allowed to use that I'm not allowed to use anymore. When I was a child, you were allowed to say the word fruit, which meant bananas, apples, oranges. Then when I was in high school, you weren't allowed to say fruit anymore because it was a bad term about a person. Now it's not the bad term about a person, and you're not allowed to think that's a bad term back home in fruits. I'm very confused. But I'm learning. You know, as we get older, we get smarter. My father used to say, we get too soon old and too late smart. And he was right about that. Man, the stuff I've learned and the stuff I just am in awe about. I had a research grant at Brooks. I worked with Dr. Sarah Wilkes, who was one of the inventors of the heart lung machine. Just an amazing guy. He did an experiment in which he pulled all of the air out of a great big glass container. Dr. Wilkes knew that air pressure, y'all remember air pressure? 14.7 pounds per square inch, right? Boy, this is going to be a test on this. Yeah. 14.7 pounds per square inch. Well, you get 100 square inches, you got a lot of pounds per square inch on that thing. Well, he wasn't thinking, and the thing collapsed. It's called an implosion. Well, what happens when you implode? Stuff jumps out. And so little glass shards jumped all over and bit Dr. Wilkes. He was in the hospital for a while. He also became deaf because the air pressure did his eardrums in. Well, the Air Force bought hearing aids, and he didn't like them. So he had hearing aids in his ears, and he would walk around with the hearing aids unplugged because he didn't want to hear people talk to him. And he didn't want to hear the phone ring, and he didn't want him to tell, the phone's calling for you, Dr. Wilkes. He's a wonderful man. Boy, he knew his science. And he helped in that. My brother, my father, and I helped develop the first space food. Right on space food is why space food is so delicious today. First of all, you want to know, it doesn't matter what it looks like. If it comes out of a toothpaste tube and it's perfectly nutritious, does it matter? And so he enlisted two semi-adults, a high school senior and a college junior, my brother. And we ate a food that he developed. It was oatmeal, unflavored box gelatin, unflavored vitamins. Just assume the word unflavored for everything. And everything else, it was perfectly nutritious. It looked like baby throw-up and had no smell and no flavor. Cardboard tastes better. Jell-O, it was jelly-ish. And my mother made it in our kitchen, right here down the street. Oatmeal, no flavor, no sugar, no. Why did he do this? Because he wanted to answer the question. Does flavor matter? Does flavor matter to animals? Probably not so much. Otherwise, vultures wouldn't eat dead meat. And dogs wouldn't turn over the garbage can because it's interesting. But what about mice? Inside that container, in the middle of that container, were 3 little black, mean little mice. They had learned meanness at the School of Education, apparently, because they were mean little mice. They bit. You grab them by the tail, they could literally turn around inside their skin and reach around it. And not only do they bite you like usually mice bite, they bite and they hold. So when you shake them, they hold on. Oh, mean little devils. But they were very useful. They were black Swiss mice. They were only that big, so they didn't weigh too much. And any time radiation would strike them at a hair follicle, the hair would turn white. So you've got a perfect radiation dosimeter up there. Remember, you're sending these things up 700 miles into the atmosphere. 700 miles. That's 3 times as far as the space station is right now. Okay, it's not 250,000 miles. That's as far as it gets to go to the moon. You'd be amazed how many kids think the space shuttle can go to the moon. The space shuttle is a school bus, and it's not going to win the Indy 500. At least not this year. So the space shuttle is the bus. Well, this thing went up 700 miles. Now, the fun thing is, you said the mice up 700 miles? Setting it up was not a problem. Getting them back was a problem. Those of you that fly airplanes, fly in them or fly them, takeoff is not a problem. Landing, that's the fun part. And any landing that you walk away from is a good landing. So, this thing is going to land somewhere. It didn't land in the water, it landed on the land, like the Russians do, in a small area of Arizona. You ever try finding a pocket watch in Arizona? Well, the problem was, once it landed, can you keep the mice alive long enough to find them and get them out of the capsule? And in this case, the first ever mice sent into space and successfully returned. The key word is successfully. That was his project. What went up there? Part of Converse went up there. The night before, he had to take them to Florida to get to the rocket, to get them up there. He said, we haven't got enough oxygen to keep them alive long enough. But if you put in a substance called lithium hydroxide, it absorbs CO2. Now you've got enough oxygen, because the CO2 won't kill them. But you can't put lithium hydroxide on mice, it dissolves them, which is not a good thing to do. So my mother tore down the kitchen curtains, made little pockets. My father stuffed them full of lithium hydroxide. We put it around there. The first kitchen curtains in space were those from Converse, Texas. And it worked wonderfully. The mice are in their 67th generation, still alive at Southwest Research. Today, they're doing fine. They didn't know. Ladies and gentlemen, they had no idea what happened when you went above 29,000 feet, Everest. This was 700 miles. What's up there? The radiation, Van Allen belt. It'll kill you. It didn't. Whew. There's other things that'll kill you. Taxes. God. So, you live here in Converse, and things are happening all the time. Everything that's ever been invented has been invented, said the director of the patent office in 1893. It hasn't. What's the last great big thing that's been invented? The computer. My grandkids say, Opie, can I play on the computer? Play is the operant word. You're not going to work on it. You're going to eat it. Terrible. Yeah. But the computer's an amazing critter. What I think is funny is that when they had the Palm Pilots that first came out, I ran home to my wife and said, looky. You can write on it, and it'll remember it. My wife got a piece of paper, and she wrote on it. She says, yep, got it. This piece of paper was free. This pencil was free. How much is that piece of junk you got there? At the time, there was $700. So I didn't get one, and she was right. But that's technology. That's advancements. I give you a problem. 3 mice into space. One day, you gotta keep them alive 5 more days, just in case you don't find them. Mice, like junior high people, eat food. How are you going to feed them? Put mouse pellets back there? You tell a mouse, don't eat it all. You ever told a kid, don't eat all the chocolate? No. I've not tried with my grandkids. You may as well waste your breath. So how are you going to feed mice up there? And mice will overeat. And what you need up there in space is a little bitty capsule full of mouse barf. You. Now what? Don't overfeed them. The device to feed them. I have one here. No clockwork. It moves a food tray. Here's the opening. It moves a food tray up ahead once every 12 hours. No clockwork, no electricity. Because that was the government's rules. Just in case the electricity fails, the mice still have to be fed. Do you know what it's like if the electricity fails at McDonald's? The kid can't make change. The kid can't even open the cash register. And you certainly can't order your egg burger. It's pathetic. Well, this thing wasn't allowed to use electricity. This is an invention that was thought of, designed, and built by people in Converse. My father designed it. Oscar Langner built it. We tested it. It worked. What makes it go? The same thing that Nautilus uses now. And what drives it? A piston driven by stuff called silly putty, the toy. When you squeeze silly putty, it resists it. When you don't squeeze it, it squeezes uniformly. So this piston goes out uniformly and releases the Nautilus and feeds the mouse. Now to get back to the mouse food, and the food that my brother and I had to eat, the tasteless stuff. It was, my mother put it in little butter tubs with little lids. I was in high school. I was so proud. 300 grams of this stuff. There was a problem. We had to measure every gram that went in and every gram that went out. I learned not to go to the bathroom in school. Well, 300 grams at lunch. I went to the lunchroom. I took the cover off. And my very best friend looked at this. Oh, God, that looks like barf! It did. I wasn't sure I wanted to eat it, but it was an experiment. I had a wonderful chemistry teacher who allowed me to eat in the chemistry lab, so I wouldn't have to be faced with my friends who wanted to make fun of my food. And we ate 300 grams for breakfast, 300 grams for lunch, and 300 grams for supper. We were weighed very carefully, went through a full physical exam at the beginning. We lasted 2 weeks. Whose fault was it that we stopped the experiment? Yep, mine. Because I was in the band. And the band was going to go to Buccaneer Days in Galveston. And I wasn't going to take baby barf to Buccaneer Days in Galveston. So we ended the experiment. We could have gone on. Is taste important? Yes. Very funny. My brother, my father, and I, all three of us were on the experiment. That's all we ate. The only thing else we drank was water. We didn't lose any weight. But we started, after the first week, we started getting recurrent dreams. My father dreamed about a bathtub full of milk in which he immersed himself and drank it all. My brother dreamed he was on a belt at the Buttercrust Bakery and just fill her up. And I dreamed that I was at a pudding factory and just ate and exploded. I enjoyed every bit of the explosion. It was wonderful. And these dreams recurred. The only other thing that I can tell you about that experiment, except that it was very successful, the closer we got to mealtime, the less hungry we got. When it was mealtime, we felt like we had just eaten a full meal. We had to choke that stuff down and weren't allowed to throw up. And it was very difficult. Right after mealtime, we were hungry. Have you ever experienced that? If you remember back, way back to your childhood, some of you can have a hard time. Right after supper comes a thing called dessert. Not always, but sometimes. You're hungry for dessert. You don't want any more of the peas, thank you very much. Or broccoli, or whatever it is. So you know what it feels like to be full and not be full. That was the problem we had. And my father came to the conclusion that yes, taste is important. Can you imagine in the Apollo or the Gemini or the Mercury in orbit around Earth? Hello, Houston. This is the pilot. Yeah, go ahead. I ain't eating this expletive deleted. You got to, it's the only thing you got up there. I ain't eating it. What are you going to do? The guy is 150 miles up there. You can't do like my father did with the monkeys. They had a little wire in their seats.